Hello students, I'm Iqbal Chughtai, your biology teacher. Today I will be teaching you the topic eye that comes under head of coordination and response. Eye is a light sensitive organ and that enables us to see things around. How we can see things around? That the light rays, when they fall over the objects around us, they are reflected. These reflected light rays, when they enter our eyes, they form an image inside our eyes. Our eyes send these images to the brain, and brain actually makes us to see these objects. We have got two eyes, and two eyes are working independent of each other, and they are forming independent images, and they are sending their independent images to the brain. Brain merges both the images and makes a central image that we observe. Both eyes are well embedded in the eye sockets that are present in the front of the skull. When we try to see the structure of the eye, what we observe, this is the front part of the eye, and you can see the eyebrows and the eyelashes. These are hair-like structures, and they are to filter the air to remove any dust particle or pollen grains that is present in the air that comes in contact with the eye. But when we see this eyelid, this muscular sheath is mainly involved in blinking activity. While this eyelid is involved in blinking activity, it does number of jobs. One thing, it removes any dust, pollen grains, or any other microbes that has been deposited over the eye surface. It removes it and drains it out into this lower part. Another thing, that it spreads the tear that is produced by the tear gland. It spreads that tear evenly over the eye surface in order to keep this eye moist and in order to prevent it from drying out. Then we have got this one white part. This one white part is actually known as sclera. This sclera is white, tough and hard, and it mostly carries blood supplies that provide nutrients and oxygen to various parts of the eye. Then we have got this tear gland. This tear gland produces salty liquid secretions that is known as tear, and this tear is actually the first responsibility of this tear is to keep this eye moist. The second thing, that the salty secretions actually ensure that no microbe is allowed to reproduce or to grow or to make this eye infected here. This tear can also be produced in terms when there is when eye is exposed to bright light conditions, or there is a possible chance that dust or any solid particle enters the eye. So that time there is a lot of production of tear in order to create flooded condition. These flooded conditions will ensure that dust particle or any solid object is flooded out of the eye, and the tear produced during exposure to bright light conditions ensures that all the heat that may be added up by that high light intensity is absorbed by the tear and eye does not get heat up. This one part is known as iris. This iris is the circular band of muscles, and these are antagonistic muscles consisting of radial and circular muscles. These iris muscles are responsible to actually define this diameter. This diameter is actually of the pupil. Pupil is no structure, it's simply a gap between the iris muscles. And pupil is the region through which reflected light rays enter the eye. This one is known as the lacrimal duct. This duct actually serves as a drain, means any liquid, any substance that accumulates in this lower part of the eye can easily drain out into this lacrimal duct, which continues inside the nose. This is the internal structure of the eye, and inside this structure you can see this one is the topmost layer that is known as sclera. This sclera is actually transparent right in front of the pupil and is making a bit curvy surface that is known as cornea. This cornea is actually made transparent in order to allow reflected light rays to enter the inside of the eye. You can see this one is the conjunctiva, that is a thin membranous tissue that is actually connected over the top of cornea, and then it is connected with the inside of the eyelids. So means this is the connecting tissue that connects eyelids with that of the eye. And these are the muscles that actually move the eyeball to sideways or upside or downward. Now, under this sclera layer, there is a pigmented layer. This pigmented layer is known as choroid layer. This choroid layer is having blood supplies that ensure continuous supply of oxygen, nutrients like glucose, and amino acids to the different tissues of this organ eye. This choroid is further projected into this structure that is known as ciliary muscles, or it is also known as ciliary body. This ciliary body is connected with this transparent lens, and it is connected with this transparent lens with the help of these thread-like structures known as ligaments, or we call them as suspensory ligaments. Suspensory ligaments are also connective tissue. They are connecting ciliary muscles to this lens. Lens is actually a transparent structure that is made up of living cells, and it is actually responsible for refracting light rays onto this particular spot where the image will be formed. But its thickness or thinness is defined by the contraction and relaxation of these ciliary muscles. In order to make distant object to be observed, this lens has to be brought thinner, while in order to see the objects closer to us, this lens must be brought thicker, and this is all defined by this ciliary body. This choroid is further projected into this iris muscles that we studied earlier. This iris muscles, this circular band of iris muscles is actually responsible to ensure the diameter of this pupil to allow a light rays to enter or pass through this lens. During dim light conditions, the pupil diameter is increased, and during bright light conditions, pupil diameter is reduced. Right, the third layer we have over here, this is the retina. This is the most sensitive layer. It consists of receptor cells. Two types of receptor cells are found in this retina layer, and these receptor cells are known as rod cells and cone cells. Rod cells are responsible for light conditions, and they are more active in bright light, and cone cells are actually responsible for colors, and they are more active when more and more rod cells are activated. On the retina, this one is a structure that is known as fova, where we have got these receptor cells more concentrated, and if the light rays are falling onto this region, the image formed is very much clear and very much well defined. But when the light rays are falling on rest of the retina, the image will be formed, but that image will not be clear, it will be blur. This is the optic nerve. This optic nerve is actually responsible for communication of the eye with that of the brain. Optic nerve consists of sensory nerve fibers and motor nerve fibers. Sensory nerve fibers are responsible to carry out the information of the images formed on the retina to the brain, whereas motor nerve fibers are responsible to carry instructions from the brain to different parts of the eye. Over here at the junction where this optic nerve actually arises, there is no rod cell or cone cell. So any light ray that falls on this region, there is no image formation. So that's why this part is known as blind spot. Because any light which falls over this region will not be forming any image, and the person will not be able to see anything because no image will be sent to the brain. When we see that there is a liquid environment between lens and that of the retina, and this liquid environment is known as vitreous humor, whereas this region that is between cornea and the lens passing through this pupil is actually filled with a fluid that is known as aqueous humor. So these aqueous humor and vitreous humor are also responsible for refracting light rays. Any light rays that has been reflected from any object around us will actually first of all fall over this cornea, will get refracted inside, then it will be refracted by this aqueous humor. It will be falling on this lens. Lens will be refracting this light to the inside of the eye, and there is another slight refraction of this vitreous humor, and ultimately all these light rays are falling on this spot that is also known as yellow spot or fova. So the image formed on fova is very much clear. Over here we can see that how the vision is observed. You can see this one as the object that from which the reflected light rays are entering the eye. So these are entering through this cornea, then refracted from aqueous humor, then from the lens, and then from the vitreous humor, and ultimately they are reaching at this region that is known as the fova. You can see it here. This one is a tree, that is a palm tree, and that is observed on this fova. But remember one thing, whatever the image formed is on the retina is upside down. It's real, small, and is upside down. But when that image will be carried by this optic nerve to the brain, that image will be reformed, and that will be further inverted, and that will be actually coming back straight to this position. Means in our eye, images that are formed of the objects, they are upside down. But when these images are reformed in the brain, their position is corrected. This is the control of light intensity. You can see that how iris muscles are responsible to define the diameter of the pupil in bright light conditions or in dim light conditions. Iris muscles are consisting of two types of antagonistic muscles. One, these are thread-like, these vertical lines are showing radial muscles, and these circular lines are showing circular muscles. When we expose to bright light conditions, the pupil diameter constricts, and less amount of light is allowed to enter the eye. At this time, circular muscles are contracting and radial muscles are relaxing. And why we do it? Because in bright light conditions, the light is coming with a very high light intensity. If more amount of light enters the eye, so that would definitely cause heating effect, and eye would get heat up, and it will result to the damage to the retina particularly. So in order to avoid any possible damage, so the pupil diameter in bright light condition, it is reduced. But when we are exposed to dim light conditions, pupil diameter needs to be increased in order to allow more and more light to enter, because the light intensity already available is very low. In order to activate more and more rod cells, more amount of light should be allowed to enter the eye. For that purpose, circular muscles of this iris, they relax and they expand outward, and radial muscles contract. This makes the pupil diameter to increase, and it allows more light to enter the eye to allow rod cells to get activated. But remember one thing, we can see the colors, we can differentiate between different colors, we can figure out the exact distance or height of the objects when in bright light. But when we are observing things in dim light conditions, we cannot easily debate over their colors, over their height, or over the distance, but we can still have the images observed in dim light conditions. Over here we can see the accommodation. Accommodation means focusing of the eye, and this focusing is mainly concerned with ciliary body, suspensory ligaments, and that of the lens. You can see this one structure. This one is a little part of the ciliary muscles shown here, and these thread-like structures are actually showing the suspensory ligaments, and this one is actually a little part of the lens. When we are observing the objects that are far apart from us, means we can say they are distant objects. So light rays coming from them are to be focused on the fova. So for that purpose, lens needs to be thinner. In that very case, this ciliary muscles relaxes. When it relaxes, it expands outward. So it pulls out these suspensory ligaments, means it stretches out these suspensory ligaments, so they become taut. When they become taut, they pull up this lens. There is a pulling pressure of this lens, and lens is just pulled out and it becomes thin. When it becomes thin, it can now easily refract the light rays that are coming from the distant objects over this fova. So that distant object can be seen clearly. At that time, closer object could be observed, but their image would be blurred. But when we need to focus on the closer objects, for that purpose, the ciliary muscles contracts. When it contracts, it moves inward, and it reduces or loosens all its pressure over these suspensory ligaments. So suspensory ligaments, they become slackened. So at that time, the pressure that has already been exerted over this lens is released, and the lens being elastic, it becomes thicker. When it becomes thicker, now it can easily refract the light rays reflected from the closer objects over this fova. So ultimately we can observe clearly the nearmost objects, but the distant object would be looking blurred. There is a disease, cataract, and cataract is most commonly observed nowadays in Pakistan, in certain parts of the world, but is more abundant in the countries what we call third world countries or developing countries. In cataract, the lens become cloudy and vision is distorted and blur. Why? Because the lens, when it turns cloudy, there is a cloudy cover appears over the lens, and that cloudy cover actually makes this lens a bit translucent. Means some of the light rays are passing through the lens and some of the light rays are reflected back. So in that very case, the person is not able to see the object clearly. The vision is distorted and blur. What are the possible causes of this cataract? That when we are exposed to high energy radiations for a prolonged time, or we maximum use high energy radiation, or means, for example, devices such as laptops, or LEDs, or even mobile, when they are emitting high energy radiations, or even when we are exposed to sunlight, we are more exposed to high energy radiations. So these high energy radiations, their continuous exposure over the lens can make this lens turn cloudy. It has also been observed the people that age is also one of the factor in most of the people that are above the age 40. So they are likely to suffer from this cataract disease. Or in some of the cases, it has also been observed that it might be genetic, because certain babies have been found born with this cataract diseases, and cataract have been found emerging in the babies 6 months or 1 year old. So means biologists are working whether it has turned a genetic factor or not. So what is the possible treatment of this cataract? That the eye specialist or eye surgeons actually make a surgery. They remove this lens, and they remove this lens with the artificial lens. An artificial lens must be elastic. So means when it is required to pulled to thin or thick, so it can do that in order to make vision of distant or closer objects. And it must be transparent, because when it is transparent, it can easily reflect light rays over the yellow spot that is also known as fova. That was our topic for today's discussion, that is eye. I hope you have learned a lot. Inshallah, see you soon with a new topic. Thank you very much.